Oh, it's so hot today. So might
Yeah.
as well stay inside and podcast. Hey everyone, this is Raymond with RPadTV. You're watching RPadTV 3000. Today I am joined by a very special guest, award-winning playwright Matthew Freeman. Matthew and I were both formerly video game journalists, although I guess I still am sometimes. But now he has had a tremendously successful career as a playwright. He's done so many cool things. And you can learn all about that on his website, Matthew Freeman Writer. You can see everything he's done, what he's been up to.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
No, for the context of this conversation, you have recently started a Substack that is all about Star Wars. Can you tell me how that got started?
I'm obsessed. I am obsessed with Star Wars. I have emotional problems about Star Wars. I have severe emotional problems about Star Wars, and I have throughout writing, my writing life has largely been besides briefly a foray into reviewing video games, which is like 20 years ago. My God. It really is something like that. But, most of the time my stuff has been sort of experimental theater or, odd plays and things like that. And so my sort of love of pop culture has sort of lived off to the side. It's been its own separate thing that I've never really written about. And I finally just decided, maybe the pandemic did it, maybe I wrote a really personal play that really, about my family. It was really hard. And so I think I kind of hit a point when I was just like, I just want to do something that I enjoy. It's just fun.
Right.
It's just fun, just for me. And my wife, Pam Grossman, who is a writer and a podcaster herself. She wrote Waking the Witch and has a podcast called The Witch Wave. She's like a tremendous sort of prominent witch. Most of the time, my Star Wars opinions are laid on her, my long-suffering wife. So she encouraged me to sort of find an outlet for it, and I decided to sort of put that all together into making this Substack. So it's been fun. And Obi-Wan on the horizon sort of gave me a target date to start with. I thought starting with responding to Obi-Wan would be a great kind of frame.
Speaking of Obi-Wan, we have our first comment of the day, which is a hello there. Very appropriate. Thank you, Carlos. Actually, I should have greeted you with that. I had this all prepped for you. I was going to greet you with a
hello there.
Nice. Amazing. Yes, of course. Yes. The epic hello there.
Yes. So your Substack, one of my favorite things about it is its tone. I mean, obviously you're a very talented writer. You're a very experienced writer, but with a lot of the Star Wars stuff that I read, mostly different Reddit theories, it seems to be one of two things. One is way too fanboyish, and the other is just way too negative and angry. What I like about your Substack is it's very positive. It's informative, and it makes me excited about something I've already seen already, which is, I think, phenomenal.
Oh, that's very kind.
Kudos to you. What is the tone of how you're approaching this, both trying to balance it as a writer and a fan?
So, well, that's a great question. And I think, the title of the Substack is cheekily called Octo Baby.
Yes.
But if you want to find it, it's just matthewfreeman.substack.com. And I think I'm just somebody who really loves Star Wars, right? And I think part of it is a generational thing. I'm in my late 40s. Star Wars is almost as old as I am. So it has been a part of my life since I was a little kid, when I was the target demographic for it, so it's been a joyful thing in my life, a delightful thing in my life, something that's made me happy for a long time. And I do think that And so the tone that I wanted to write from was this sense of like, thank you for this. This is a wonderful thing. I really enjoy it and I appreciate it. And also I do think, look, I got off of Twitter before episode 9 came out, right? Because I just couldn't, there's this sort of, and I don't think it's in our nature. I think social media reinforces a sort of like, comments that get a lot of reactions and agitation and upset. And so it's very easy to sort of fall into this isn't good enough, or this isn't quite it, or I wished it had been this, and get a lot of like amens to that.
Right.
But and I understand where that comes from, but I just don't relate to it. I really love this stuff. And so that's what I want to write about. I want to write about how much I enjoy it and what makes me happy about it. Without being just with a sense of, of discernment and intellect, but, just because I like it. Yeah.
Right. But for a lot of people in our age range that grew up with the original trilogy, a lot of them, I don't know if it's the majority or not for that age range, they really did not like the prequels, or pretty much anything except the original trilogy.
Yeah, it's true.
I think people like you and me, I love most of it, almost all of it. I'm a big mark for Dave Filoni. For me, Star Wars Rebels is one of the best things ever. Star Wars or not, it's just one of my favorite works ever.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic.
So that's why it's almost surprising that your Substack is so positive, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, it's funny. I remember and I write about this on the Substack. I wrote a essay called "How to Enjoy Things," and I write about when episode 1 came out, and I watched that movie 16 times in the theater, right? For real. And I had friends who sort of joked like that was the one thing that was nice to you that summer, that kind of feeling. But but I think there was a part of me when I watched it that wanted to create that familiarity, because part of what you love about the originals is that you know them by heart. They just feel like sitting in your parents' basement watching a movie. No matter the quality wasn't even the point when you were a kid.
Right.
It was just like, oh, I know this. And it's hard to have that feeling about something you've watched once. You just can't feel that way about it. So I think maybe some part of me was trying to recreate that experience or whatever. But I just kind of got into what he was trying to do and said to myself, these are not those. They're different. But I almost made like a decision to say, I'm going to enjoy these for what they are. I'm getting something I always wanted. So I don't want to ruin it for myself,
Right. And I mean, there's a point that I don't understand the people that hate watch these kind of things. Like, I don't.
If you don't like it, don't watch it.
Yeah, that's how I feel. But some people feel otherwise. We have another comment from Carlos. My only problem is the immaculate conception of Anakin. Well,
okay, fair enough. I would say to that obviously watching it in the theater at the time, when it was announced that Anakin was a virgin birth, I mean, the audience literally went like, what? But in a way, and this is not just me defending it, I think this is just true, is that those sorts of narratives are super common in mythology, not just Christian mythology. Like lots of mythology have sort of virgin births. And so it felt like Lucas was just like adding that to his particular mythology. But obviously, it's a big choice. It's a big choice for sure.
We have Stardrew saying, hello, Matthew and Ray. And another comment from Restloy. I think the Immaculate Conception is better than Lucas creating yet another powerful father full of mystery.
Maybe he was just out of fathers. he had run out of,
I don't mind the Immaculate Conception. It don't bother me, really. Yeah. It's kind of whatever. The midichlorian counts, they're
Well, you know, what was the interesting thing about the midichlorians, if you look at the script, is that they're intended to be. They bring up a few times in the episode 1 script the idea of symbiosis. You know, they say we're symbiotes living together for mutual advantage, and they talk about the Gungans and the surface dwellers of Naboo being symbiotes. And so midichlorians are like part of the theme that he was writing about being symbiotic. But it was also like a big mythological dump about like how they determine who has the Force, you know, which I thought was sort of interesting. But yeah, I mean, those movies are full of very big, surprising choices. And that's sort of, you have to either, you know, it's fascinating. It's cool that way. It definitely gave us all a lot to talk about.
Right. And I loved seeing the Jedi at the peak of their powers. I thought that was awesome.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
many of them.
The Darth Maul fight is just so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Stargrew says, just when you think of what you're fighting for it, and will give you powerful. Sorry, Vader, the high ground won't help you here.
Well, Vader did have the high ground briefly in the last episode.
Yes, so, he did. Yes, I thought of it right immediately. So let us talk about the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Let's start giving it a quick 2-minute review. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, obviously, you're talking to me, so I thought it was absolutely dope. My sort of final assessment when I watched the whole thing was that it felt like a big victory lap for the prequel era cast, you know, for all intents and purposes. And it felt like it's a great story. It's got everything you want out of Star Wars. It gives you like this wonderful Ewan McGregor performance. He's like so rich and great in it. But like, I also felt like what they almost were doing, especially because the prequels were so not appreciated in their time, was this cast got to come back and like get a round of applause for what they've done, you know, so that it felt very sentimental to me in that way. It was very cool. How about you?
Yes, I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic victory lap, as you say, but for me, it was nice to see Hayden Christensen, for me, get some redemption and get some of the plaudits maybe he didn't get the first time around.
For sure.
I don't think he was nearly as bad as people said at the time. I thought some of his problems were the writing and not his acting. But I loved it. There's great action sequences. I love the lightsaber duels. I love the story it told. I thought young Leia was adorable. And
oh my gosh, so great. Every time we watched her, Pam cried.
Oh, that's great. And for me, I liked it a lot better than Boba Fett, Book of Boba Fett. Not quite as much as The Mandalorian for Dave Filoni reasons. I mean, for me, Mandalorian totally won me over with having live action Ahsoka and live action Bo-Katan. I mean, that totally made it for me.
Yeah.
As for
yeah, they were terrific. I mean, it was interesting. You know, there's so many different, you've said this, there's so many sections of the fan base to please, you know, and the Filoni fans have got, I mean, Mandalorian is just crack for the Filoni fans.
Yeah. And I honestly, at this point, I think I'm more of a Filoni fan than a Lucas fan. I know that.
Oh, sacrilege.
I know. Some people say sacrilege. Aha, we have Ms. Mo. Do you think the series filled plot holes from the prequels or created more? I did want to get to this at the end, but since the lovely lady asked, let's do it now.
Okay.
I mean, there are a few things like in Leia's message in R2-D2 when she doesn't acknowledge, you know, that she knew Ben Obi-Wan in the past. I think they explained that nicely. I don't know if some people felt that. I also thought the series explained when Vader said, you know, when last we met, I was still the learner, that whole thing. I think the series explained that.
Getting your ass handed to you will make you talk that. I thought so, yeah. And I think the Leia stuff works fine. I mean, I think if people get too hung up on canon, I just think of the writer's room and what they're trying to accomplish and how they're trying to get Obi-Wan Kenobi off that planet. And the only thing that could get him off that planet would ever be something as important as Leia herself, right? So, and I think it works fine. And I also think, like, if you want to justify it, like, here's how I justify it. She's 10 when she meets him.
Yeah.
If you've ever met any of your parents' friends when you were 10, if you met them again when you were 20, it would not be the same relationship. I mean, there's a lot of distance and time there. So she has a love for him, but she's also in a very different situation. And she acknowledges that she knows who he is. And she does name her son Ben. So it adds up.
I think her naming her son Ben makes a lot more sense after the adventure they had together. Actually, sent that to my good friend Anthony Parisi, who asked me a similar question as Mo. We have another one from Rustloy. I'm glad that the show didn't feel beholden to some of the bad ideas or just aged pieces from A New Hope. Yes, one of my readers didn't like the lightsaber fights in terms of it felt like both Vader and Obi-Wan were doing too much for their age, because A New Hope is 9 years later after this series, and obviously Alec Guinness is much older. They're both slower. The fights aren't as dynamic, and I don't know. It makes sense to me. I don't feel as good as I felt 9 years ago.
Yeah. First of all, you age quickly. I'm just warning to all of you who are in your 20s who wonder how in 10 years someone could become immobile. I now wake up and wonder how I hurt myself by sleeping. Yeah. So,
I feel you there, brother.
I'm 46. I should probably work out or something, but that's not going to happen. So, but yeah, I mean, I think they've been working on this problem, right? Which is Lucas the first ever lightsaber duel, was filmed in 1977 with no expectation of other movies. It was just these old masters having a samurai sword fight.
Right.
And then he introduces Obi-Wan in episode 1 as this acrobatic young man. And they've been working on getting him backwards to old. And I think in this, they sort of show he's aging. They show him getting hurt. It works for me. I don't think it. I think if you watch this and then watch A New Hope, if you're not, doing a lot of math in your head and you just accept the story for what it is, it works fine.
I think so too. I mean, the lightsaber duels in Obi-Wan weren't as dynamic as the ones in the prequels. He's not flipping around and doing all that kind of stuff because he's older. So I think there's a reasonable progression of their physicality and age there. Plus he's living in a desert. I don't think he's moisturizing, probably getting too much sun,
Yeah, I guess living in the desert really will age you quickly.
And sucks all the water out of you.
Yeah, and I think, Star Wars is not science fiction. It's a space. It's science fantasy, right? It's not when you look way into Star Wars logic, like it is science fiction. There are holes all over the place because it was never written to be treated as if it all adds up, right? There's no sound in space, right? So what you're really looking for is the broad strokes of a myth. And I think if you look at the broad strokes of a myth, and you're not, hung up on counting, how many years this takes or whatever, but you think of, the battle between the mentor and his apprentice, and then years later, right, they meet and they're old and they are there to and Obi-Wan uses his last moment to steer the son towards the father. Those big capital letters ideas are what makes Star Wars awesome, I think. Is that level of kind of mythological weight that are kind of beyond like, did this little thing add up to this? Right?
I mean, and the finale they both got their asses kicked, so that takes a toll on you too. So
it's true. Yeah.
Like Vader got messed up. I wasn't expecting that at all.
No, me too.
Let's talk about some of your favorite moments or favorite episodes of this series. What were some of your favorite parts?
Well, I loved Leia. I thought that she was wonderful, and I thought, that's a big choice. You can imagine them sitting in a room and going, "Can we pull this off? Is the audience going to hate this?" Because a 10-year-old Leia could be cloying, could be annoying, could be whatever, child actors. But Vivian Lyra Blair, I think is her name, is wonderful, and I also think it's a tribute to the writing and the environment that Deborah Chow must have created.
Yeah.
Because child actors thrive well when they're surrounded by adults who understand how to work with them, And so, but I think that was wonderful. Seeing Ewan McGregor again, but individual moments you asked about. So I really love the very beginning when you find Obi-Wan sort of just like making sashimi. There's something I love those moments in Star Wars that are not big battles where you kind of live in the world for a second.
Okay.
And I really liked finding him there. It just felt like an interesting choice of how to begin the story. It was visually dynamic without being kind of a big swirling moment. You got a sense of where he was just visually in a way that I thought was really great. I loved the moment that you find out who Reva really is, who the third sister really is.
It was well done.
I thought that was really well done. I loved third sister versus Vader fight is like super. You don't really see Sith fight each other very much.
Yeah.
Or I know she's not technically Sith, but you don't see the Darksiders really go at it. And so watching the sort of ferocity of their fight was fun. Watching Vader burn Obi-Wan in a fire. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But isn't it sort of perfect for the kind of retribution he would look for? It's filled with great moments, but those are a couple I can kind of pick out.
Wrestloy's favorite moments. I like how dark and powerful that Vader was portrayed. Like when he force smashed the ship, that was awesome. The best part of Rogue One, but done over 6 episodes, is a fan of the 40 Warhammer 40K, and that did it for me. And
fair enough. All right.
Carlos asks, do we get a rematch? Obi-Wan is up 2-1 right now. Is he though? You could argue that he's up 3-0. he got what he wanted out of each of those fights.
Yeah, I don't know. It was interesting when Vader says, "This is why you will always lose," because I don't know. Vader kind of loses a lot to Obi-Wan, which is probably why he's so mad. I don't know. I mean, the rematch we get is A New Hope.
Yeah. I brought up this point to a friend that Obi-Wan had 2 opportunities to kill Vader and save the lives of millions of people in the galaxy. I mean, I understand at the time it would go against the Jedi code and his personal belief system, but looking through the retroscope, he could have saved everyone a lot of hurt and pain.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, that moment with Anakin in episode 3 is, really just heartbreaking. And you can imagine him thinking, this dude is definitely dead.
Oh, yeah. He's got no legs. He's in a lava pit. The lava's getting higher.
It's also not very Jedi to, chop the guy's head off at the end.
Yeah.
It's not kind of a Jedi move.
Yeah.
He's already chopped him up real good. My friend Kyle, left episode 3 declaring, chop him up, so, but yes, it is true. Obi-Wan does let Vader live to fight another day a couple of times.
So for me, in broad strokes, I really loved episodes 5 and 6 of Obi-Wan. I think Andrew Stanton contributing to the writing of those episodes made a big difference in quality. I mean, that guy's a Pixar god. And when I saw his name in the credits, I'm like, oh, that's why I like this one a bit better. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Extremely talented man. But the scene after their duel in the finale, where half of Vader's mask is gone, just like in Rebels, it reminded me of Rebels when he fought Ahsoka.
Yeah.
So many things they did there. They had, depending on who is speaking, the different lightsaber glare on the helmet would turn red or blue. I thought that was really well done. The way they blended James Earl Jones' voice and Hayden Christensen's voice at the same time, because half the mask was gone, just outstanding. I thought, and of course, the content and the delivery of the dialogue. So many things about that scene worked for me. Just phenomenal.
Right on. I mean, Hayden Christensen's performance in that scene, the look on his face is just the way he says, "I killed Anakin."
Yeah.
Is, with a kind of vicious glee. You could see the enjoyment almost on his face. I mean, it was an epic moment and worth, they earned it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
See, I like that point that you brought up that he like Anakin felt like he was winning that one, but in reality, it gave Obi-Wan the absolution that he needed, that he didn't create this monster. So even then, Obi-Wan kind of beat him again there.
Yeah, well, I think it's true that, in a way, because Obi-Wan feels so much guilt about what's happened to Anakin. And you watch, and even Vader blames him, says, "I am what you made me." And I think in one of my essays, my response is like, neither of these guys are responsible for this, actually. It's all Palpatine's fault.
Yeah.
These are two guys in a trap Palpatine made. Anakin is literally living inside a trap Palpatine made.
That's right.
And neither of them, so they're never going to resolve it by beating each other up. They're just like, losing over and over again, really. But in a way, Obi-Wan's sense of responsibility is misplaced, right? And so in that moment when Vader says, "I am not your failure,"
yeah,
it means Obi-Wan can let it go. Even if that's not Vader's intention, even if it's more like a defiance of Obi-Wan, it really does seem like a moment where Obi-Wan is released almost by his enemy. Yeah.
We have another comment from Restloy. Mace Windu would have saved the galaxy in Obi-Wan's shoes. Yeah,
he really bit it though. He's already Obi-Wan survived episode 3.
That's true. That's
so,
true.
I don't know. Mace Windu walked right into it. Straight into the lion's den and out the window.
Now, I want to talk about probably the most divisive character in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which is Reva, the third sister. What did you make of the character and the performance of Moses Ingram?
I mean, I thought it was fantastic. I loved her. I thought the third sister was a really wonderful sort of, it added a layer of chaos to the whole situation, because if Vader and Obi-Wan just on a direct track is the whole story, we sort of we know everything there. We sort of know, we can be a little surprised, but we're not super surprised. We know where these guys wind up. We don't know about her. We don't know her story. She created a sense of mystery. We don't know who she's after or why. It showed how the Inquisitors have a relationship with each other, like the sort of competitive, dark side, always everybody trying to get ahead of each other. And really created a sense of surprise. And Moses Ingram, I think, is a brilliant actress. And I wrote a little bit about why I think, responses to her were what they were, but I'd love to hear what you think.
I mean, I think a lot of the flack she's been getting is just straight out racism. Not all of it, but there's some of that there.
Yeah.
One problem I had, it wasn't with her at all. I thought she did well with what she was given. I don't think it was conveyed how young she was supposed to be, the character. Because Revenge of the Sith is 10 years before Obi-Wan. So when she's a youngling, she's what, like 8, give or take?
Yeah, that's true.
So she's supposed to be, a teenager as the third sister. So she's supposed to be rash and immature and impulsive. And Moses is, I think, in her late 20s. So she doesn't look like teenager young. She's still a young woman, but not. I don't think that really came across in the series, which is something I would have liked to have seen.
I think that's a really interesting point, and I think that's probably true. I mean, Star Wars has had a problem with that for a while. Like Natalie Portman was supposed to be much younger than she appeared to be in Phantom Menace. She's supposed to be like 14. She didn't seem 14, But so there's a lot of that, sort of Luke, now especially the way Luke Skywalker looks in A New Hope. He's supposed to be like a kid, and now he looks like 37. But everybody smoked more of that back then, But yeah, I agree with that. And I think when people hear, some of these responses are just racism, a lot of times I think they respond with, well, I just didn't like the performance, or I didn't, I'm not being a racist to not like the character. And I think one thing people don't realize is that it's not just overtly hating this person because of their skin color that is the only way to have a racist reaction. Right. Sometimes people are being racist in a way they just don't identify. They're demanding sort of like, they're saying, why is this actress even cast? Why is she, how dare she be in this role for all intents and purposes? And they're not asking those questions of actors who are not actors of color.
Right.
And so there's a different reaction that she's receiving, sort of demands of what she's expected to do that aren't being asked of everybody else. And I think that people don't always identify that in their reaction, but it's true. There's a lot of that,
One of my friends was like, hey, she survived getting stabbed in the gut by a Sith, unlike Qui-Gon. I'm like, oh.
True. Yeah, rage keeps you alive.
Carlos says, where do you stand on lightsaber stabs? Do you die instantly, or does it cauterize? And yeah, I think it does cauterize. I don't know why I think that. I can't explain it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on two things: the needs of the story, and where you get stabbed. Right?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
You get stabbed different places, you're going to die or survive. So we'll just say to ourselves, Qui-Gon got stabbed in a place you don't come back from, and Rita got stabbed in a place you can walk around after.
I think the way they explained the Grand Inquisitor surviving is that he has 2 stomachs and only one of them got punctured.
Oh, nice. Okay. That's great. They don't even bother with that. I always love it when they don't bother. When they don't bother, when they just say he's alive. Don't worry about it.
Accept it.
Yeah.
Wrestler says a lightsaber stab should boil you alive. It melts steel doors, or it should set you on fire.
These would be very short movies if that were true.
Yeah, I mean, it's a laser sword, so
yeah.
I don't know. We're writers, man. We didn't take physics. You guys,
I think there's no sound in space either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. They, if you left him in the body, it would slowly melt the body, but they usually stab you and take it right out. So
Right.
Yeah.
What did you think of some of the other new characters that were introduced? We had O'Shea Jackson Jr. as Roken, and the British lady that played Ilaria Sand in Game of Thrones.
I think it's Indira Varma.
Let's go with that.
Who played Tala. I think if I mispronounced her name, I'm really sorry. I probably did. I shouldn't have tried, but anyway, but she's terrific. I've seen her in a bunch. I love Tala. I thought she was fabulous. I mean, just that's how you make the use of your minutes on screen. Like every scene she was in, she was sincere. She was interesting. She was heartfelt. You immediately cared about her and immediately cared when she died. Like it was just, sorry, spoiler alert to anyone who's watching this, but
I think we're way past that point now.
I mean, we're way past that, right? Okay, fair enough. Rogan was interesting to me. I mean, to me, he seemed like, we need a generic rebel leader. Like he seemed very much, like a rebel leader. He didn't have like a strong character trait for me. But I really liked O'Shea Jackson's performance. He just kind of had a lot going on. And that moment at the end where Obi-Wan says, don't stop. And he says, I'm just getting started. The twinkle in his eye, I'm like, this guy's been cast in more stuff.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask you, what do you think he's going to pop up in next? Because there are a bunch of other series happening around this time too. So he can be used in a number of things.
I mean, Andor feels like it would fit in with him. I mean, Andor, I don't know what the exact time frame is, but I know it leads directly into Rogue One, which goes into Star Wars. So, he could show up in Andor. But, for these days, one character can be in video games. He can be in
that's true.
Jedi Survivor. He could be in, he can show up in whatever animated story they haven't announced. So it's really hard to say, but they're doing a lot of storytelling in this interim period. So I could see
they are
showing up just about anywhere. Yeah.
No, this might be just me, but I cannot look at him without seeing his father also. He looks so much like his dad. It's amazing.
It's true. It's true.
So I was waiting for like some space rap to start happening. That did not happen. But
no, but he's terrific.
So would you agree that this is redemption for Hayden Christensen?
I'd say so. I mean, I think his performance is lovely. I think, he has his moments in all of these stories and he does his best. But I think it's almost like the nostalgia for who he is such a good feeling too. Just seeing him with the lightsaber duel when he comes back as Anakin from Attack of the Clones, for all intents and purposes, is just so wonderful. Just to see them kind of reenact that pattern, and the smile he gives, and that it's just wonderful. And so, I think it's definitely it's a great way to say, we love you and we miss you to this actor who is such an important part of the story.
I hope people have a different appreciation for him now. I mean, I realize that, as you've mentioned in your Substack, that people that grew up with the prequels, they love those movies. They loved him.
Yeah.
And I hope that other people appreciate him now as well.
I hope so too. I
don't know if you watched any of this year's Star Wars Celebration, but the reaction he got there, I thought that was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, I did watch some of it, and I thought that was great. And it reminded me of the year before when Ahmed Best came out and got so much love. And, the stories he told. I mean, the thing is, these are people. And we forget that as an audience, that these are people and they're excited. They've gotten their big break, to get into these iconic movies. And to be told that their part is bad or they're hated or they ruined Star Wars, it'll, I have, if my boss at work looks askance at me, sometimes I have a bad day. If the whole culture decides that you ruined Star Wars, imagine the therapy bills, so,
didn't Jake Lloyd quit acting entirely?
Well, Jake Lloyd, I feel really bad for. I mean, I think he's had a really hard time in his life. Partially because of whatever he is dealing with in his own life, I want to be sensitive to, but also because this was hard for a 9-year-old. And so, I think it's watching these actors who, we all think of as sort of untouchable, but are real people who had a hard time, be embraced and adored. It's very healing to watch, I think, for everybody.
So Rustloy has a great question here. Where do you stand on Disney making more trilogies versus doing high quality miniseries? So far, the miniseries have been great.
Yeah, I don't use the word Disney. I always say Lucasfilm. Because we don't do that when we talk about. I'm just saying we don't do that when we talk about Marvel. Do you ever notice that? We don't say should Marvel Studios make more movies. We don't say does Disney want to make more Marvel movies. But I think Disney is a little bit of a the mouse now owns Star Wars thing. So that's no offense to anyone. I usually say Lucasfilm should make more.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just think it's a distinction. It's an interesting distinction we make. But I mean, I think they will make more films, and I can't wait for them to make more films because I absolutely love Star Wars on the big screen. It's where it should be. Right. But I think giving it some space will be a very good thing for when people embrace and get excited about Star Wars on the big screen again. I don't know if they're going to make trilogies or standalone films or whatever. I love the miniseries that they're making, but I look forward to them, coming back on the big screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's room for both. They work in different ways. Obviously, movies are extremely lucrative, but they're also just such a mass market thing. But there's also a lot of pressure, as you were talking about earlier. That both for the actors, writers, directors, everyone involved. Whereas with a miniseries, you have more room to breathe. You have more room for slower, deliberate storytelling. Just because of the nature of the medium. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm thinking Solo would have worked better as a 6-part series than as a movie.
But I also think that if you had waited 3 years and then Solo came out, people would have been so excited about Solo. I think there's something that happens that, the original movies were 3 years apart. And then it took 16 years before episode 1 came out. And then 3 years between each one of those. And then 10 years before episode 7. And then after episode 7 came out, there were like 5 movies in 5 years, Right. So I think, one of my speakers just died. Let me know if you can hear me. But yeah, so I think headphones, not speakers. I'm dating myself. But I do think part of the issue is that Star Wars should feel special that way, and that I think it would be great if we had a little more time to look forward to them, the ones on the big screen, and then get our fix from these TV shows that are so great.
Absolutely a fair point. Rustloy says the miniseries seems more geared to the older age demographic, the maturation of the stories, whereas the movies seem geared for mass market. I don't know. I mean, sure, that sounds reasonable.
Sure. No, I think movies, I mean, I think it's all mass market in its way. Star Wars is very a broad demographic thing. I mean, kids to adults love Star Wars. And The Mandalorian is not for a niche market. I mean, it's for everybody, right? Yeah. But I do think movies tell stories differently. They're much more efficient. Yeah. You can tell a whole story in 2.5 hours, and Obi-Wan is like 5 hours of story. Mm-hmm. So it's, they're very different. They really are different mediums. They really tell stories differently. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I need to give that some more thought. I'm not really sure at the moment. I mean, as you said, The Mandalorian had a massive appeal to all sorts of demographics there. Mm-hmm. But I also think media is just changing, partially because of the number of streaming services, the way people want content. So many younger people now use their phones as their primary screen. So
that's true.
Maybe I don't know if streaming is necessarily for an older demographic. It's just a different demographic. COVID obviously changed a lot of people's expectations for going to the movies, or even if they're comfortable going to a theater. Actually, as a playwright, how do you feel about that?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, as a playwright, theater is having its own completely own relationship with that, because the performers are affected as well as the audience, right?
Yeah.
right? So like on screen, it's done. You put it on a screen. If people get COVID in the audience, it's not going to shut the show down.
Right.
But on Broadway, they're canceling shows and bringing in understudies en masse because like the performers get sick. So it's a very different, relationship between an audience and the thing you're watching. But I do think you're right that our relationship with how we receive entertainment has changed. I think streaming is now I mean, my dad is 79 years old and he streams, he watches everything on Apple TV too. He just watches different stuff than I do. He watches, old cowboy movies and the BBC and mysteries from PBS, but it's still streaming. So I don't know if streaming separates it, but in terms of how you watch it, the bite-sized, shorter content, things like that. Yeah.
Although not that short. We saw what happened with Quibi. That was it.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
That wasn't going to work.
Quibi joke.
And what was CNN's service that was around for like a month?
That's true. I guess it's not endless what the content is that people want to find. Well, it's also, and it's funny. I do talk about my dad's love of the old serials, and how I've inherited that because that's what Star Wars is referencing often. But there's I've become very aware that a show, when they say a show is bingeable, what they really mean is that it's written like an old serial, that it always has a cliffhanger at the end of the episode.
Right.
That's what bingeable really means.
Right.
They never end an episode on we did it. Now come back and find out what happens next week. It's we did it. And yet, and then come back and find out, and that is the old serial model. It's literally a cliffhanger. Is he going to fall off the thing? And so I think the streaming services have figured out that that's what's old is new again, and that's the model. It's kind of
So I'm going to take a turn to the dark side for a second and talk about my least favorite episode of Obi-Wan, which was episode 4. It wasn't a bad episode by any means, but it didn't feel like it advanced the story a lot. And with 6 episodes, time is precious. I think they could have done a better job on that one. A lot of the reviews I read were blaming Deborah Chow for that, and I think it was more the writing than the directing, because episodes 5 and 6 more than made up for it. So I just wanted to put that out there so nobody thinks I'm just kissing the series ass.
It's funny about the question of least favorite, because that's fair. I mean, no one is obligated to like everything. I don't really phrase my interests in terms of best and least. I tend to just think of them as different, and I like them all for the reasons that they exist. And I think that it's just kind of how I've chosen to approach things is what I liked about it, what I was into, just for my own pleasure, just for my own enjoyment. I also think it's interesting because these things are made by a village. I mean, so many people make these stories, and the person who's the director tends to get a lot of responsibility for everything. But there's writers and consulting producers and the needs of we've decided we're making 6 episodes, and what are the things that every actor wants to be accomplished, and how have we set up the last episode? There's so much to think about that all of these decisions from the outside look like, well, why did they do that? And I promise you, they really thought about why they did that, whether or not it felt like it worked. A lot of people worked very hard on even the episodes we didn't like, so that's why I tend to kind of leave it at that. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, there's definitely a feeling of, when you're making 6 episodes, which one of these episodes is absolutely necessary to the story,
I don't know. It's in some ways, it reminds me of this scene from Bad Santa where Billy Bob Thornton got drunk and ate the kids' whatever calendar. I forget what the Christmas one is called. So he
Advent.
Advent calendar, and he like puts like candy corn and tapes it back up. And when the kid opens it, he's like, a candy corn, and then he's like, they can't all be winners, kid.
Exactly. So, that's great. That movie has my favorite bit in that movie is when he just says, I beat the shit out of some kids today, but it was for a purpose.
This delivery in that movie is
so
outstanding.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So outstanding. So there have been hints that there will be a season 2. Both Ewan and Hayden said they'd be down for it. Do you want a season 2? What would you want to see there? What do you think it can be? There's still a lot of time between this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sort of in between on that because I absolutely love Ewan McGregor as this character. And I love the creative team and what they've been able to put together. And I'm sure that if this is season 1, season 2 is going to be spectacular, whatever they do. But it's hard for me to know what I want to see, right? I've seen a lot of what I need to see from this character in terms of real story, right? And I'm always suspicious of when we start just kind of coming up with a reason to bring the character back.
Yeah.
I think we need to have some compelling reason that he has an adventure that is so important to the main story, or something that's so outside the range of the main story that it's like fascinating. But if they're, less is more, as they say. We've gotten a lot out of this. It's really terrific.
Yeah.
So if they did a season 2, I would have to be convinced that it was. I wouldn't have to be convinced. If they announced it, I'd be very excited. But I would say I'm curious what they would come up with that could justify that.
I have similar feelings as you. I mean, I love Star Wars and I always want more of it, but I don't know if I need more of this one because that last lightsaber duel and the scene after it was so good that can you get better than that? I mean,
yeah.
Do you try?
I'm fat. Right. You can't kind of top that. I mean, they will try. I do think that you could use de-aging stuff to go do an Anakin Obi-Wan story because these days that's possible. You can also, I'm interested. Qui-Gon Jinn is such an important mythological character, and we see him for a second. And this sort of training on how to retain your identity in the Force is super important to Star Wars. I don't know if that's a bingeable, fun story, watching a man meditate often, but I would be interested in that. So I would love it if they could find a way to bring them all back again because it was so great, and the audience numbers will probably ask for that. But it was so good that I don't need more in order to have loved what I got.
Yeah. Rustloy says, I'm fine with one and done. Great last entry on anything related to the Skywalker saga. Yeah, I enjoyed the finale so much that, I totally get that. So
yeah, I mean, it's terrific. There's so much more that they can do, but I'm looking forward to the future and Andor and Ahsoka. I mean, they've got so much story to tell. I would almost prefer if they just made a movie. I mean, if they would give him a movie, like a 2.5-hour movie of something, I don't know why it doesn't have to be that big arc. We could just see a great, if they can come up with a great story that fits in that world, I would watch Ewan McGregor return as that character for sure.
Carlos says, I'd love a Quinlan Voss series.
I mean, they keep talking about Quinlan Voss, so who knows at this point?
I think he's the worst Jedi ever. Now, I'm only saying that because I know how much Carlos likes him. He is not the worst Jedi ever. Rustloy is not a fan of Andor, so he's asking, why are you looking forward to Andor? Hype it for me.
Oh, I don't know boy. Okay. Well, it's hard to hype something I haven't seen. I just want to see more Star Wars, so I cannot convince you to enjoy something. I would say it's also, I'm not a hype man for Lucasfilm, but I will say that it looks really like hard sci-fi compared to some of the
Yeah.
other Star Wars. It looks like a science fiction show. Rogue One looked more like a science fiction movie than like a lot of the space fantasy, right? So it feels like it's more in that world, and almost like it looked like Battlestar Galactica or something. So it may be very different, and I know some people are interested in that. So it may be very different, and all the actors are phenomenal. Fiona Shaw's in it.
Yeah.
Fiona Shaw is in it. Okay, that's it. Okay, I have now hyped it for you. Fiona Shaw is in it, and if that is not important to you, I don't know. I can't understand you.
I mean, at this point in his life, he's kind of like a more badass Han Solo. I think it's that time period where he's kind of lost his faith in his life and fighting the Empire, and he's kind of more of a cutthroat mercenary kind of dude. So seeing where he is and how he got to where he is in Rogue One, I'm intrigued. I think he's a very talented actor as well. And Fiona Shaw's awesome. I mean, you said,
the creative team is great. It's it's a lot of terrific writers and directors, and it's got fantastic actors, and it looks good. So I think if they tell me a good story, I'm in.
Carlos was saying, I was also thinking Obi-Wan season 2 should be a movie, maybe something to do with stopping Palpatine stealing force-sensitive beings to extend his life or uncovering it. I don't know. I mean, it's still, it seems like a step down from that awesome fight and conversation they had after the fight. So that would kind of might ruin things for me. And we have so much going on with so many other characters.
Like, we watch Obi-Wan learn sign language to talk to Tusken Raiders.
There we go.
The whole thing.
Yeah. How did he learn that they walk in single file? We need to know this.
Yes, exactly. I do think too that there are people who would, there's an audience out there, people who just like to watch, people on a boat not move for a long time. I would watch Obi-Wan just kind of go back and forth to the market and come home, and I'd be like, what a lovely life. Or Obi-Wan sets up his house. We haven't seen him in his house yet.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. It could be like a home makeover show.
What's that popular This Old House kind of thing? This Old Cave with Obi-Wan Kenobi.
But yeah, it's exciting.
Out of the series that we know about that are coming, what are you looking forward to the most?
Well, I think Mandalorian season 3 I'm excited about, because they're really going straight for to Mandalore, and that seems like big, epic, cool, very Star Wars to me. There's the Mandalorians almost, like the Jedi are a creed, and the Mandalorians are another kind of creed, and right. It really feels like a separate mythology running parallel, and I'm excited to see how that plays out. And Ahsoka feels like it's going to finish out the Rebels story. And Rebels had such a wonderful ending that really teased exciting adventures to come, and it feels like Ahsoka is going to give us that. So I'm thrilled to see where that's going to go, for sure.
Me too. They've already cast Sabine. I love that actress. I think she's a great fit. Curious about her voice. Do you think Ezra will be in the series?
I would be shocked if he's not. And they love giving us what we want. They're not really into making us wait. Yeah. When they promised the rematch of the century, they gave it to us with Obi-Wan and Darth. There's no teasing stuff. So if they think we're excited for Ezra, I feel like they're going to give it to us.
I hope so. I hope so.
I hope so too. Yeah.
So I had a great time chatting with you, and a very positive Star Wars chat. No negativity about young Luke or Reva. So this was fantastic. If you want to learn about more about Matthew's writing, go to MatthewFreemanWriter.com. Please subscribe to his Substack. It's really awesome Star Wars content, and I hope you churn out a lot more for the rest of the year. I'm looking forward to reading it. And of course,
thank you so much.
You have all my social stuff. Please subscribe, like, ring the bell on YouTube. I hate doing this part so much.
But, hey, it's important, and you do awesome. You're awesome. So I hope everybody.
Thank you. Oh, one last comment before we go. My best guess for Obi-Wan season 2 would be focused for at least a big part will be Vader learning about Luke, Leia. I don't recall the movies ever explaining how he knew about them. He didn't know about them.
Right. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. He finds out about Luke from the Emperor, although the comics sort of explain that he does know in a separate, there's like a whole comics arc about Luke, but he doesn't find out about Leia until the very end of Return of the Jedi. And that's why Luke lashes out at him.
Ape shit on him. That's right. When he's like, your sister.
Right. He even says Obi-Wan's failure is complete when he finds out about Leia from Luke's thoughts. So Leia is sort of the big moment, his discovery of her. So it actually, he never finds out about her until the very, very end.
So Resloy, hope we answered that one for you. But since we went into slightly extra time, I'm going to tell you again, subscribe to this Substack if you want more awesome Star Wars content. And please join me next week where I will have hopefully a special guest talking about Pokemon Go. Matthew, thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you soon about a next nerdy Star Wars series we can talk about.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Fantastic.